Hey, thank you all for joining us today. We're here to discuss, why network infrastructure is still a key piece of a complete IT strategy. And one of the things that we've noticed over time is that as line of business software, as customer data, as corporate data continues in many cases to migrate to different cloud platforms, the need for on-premise compute, on-premise storage, and on-premise servers is being reduced greatly. And a lot of folks, that we talk to talk about getting out of the IT business altogether. And that's, in large part a very tangible and realistic goal, except for network infrastructure, because in fact, when you're accessing data or when you're accessing applications outside of your offices, the connection there and the equipment and infrastructure that supports it becomes a lifeline for your business. So today we're going to talk a little bit about why keeping that proactively managed and up to date is so important. So I'd like to open up with an introduction of some of the folks that have graciously agreed to join us and share some of their knowledge. We have as the managing sales lead for our managed infrastructure and cloud services group, Robert Heckscher. He's been worn many hats, including network engineer, all the way through sales rep and then leadership of the sales team here. We also have our cloud and managed services practice manager, Nick Sitter. He has deep network engineering roots as well. You'll find that that's a theme with all of us here. And brings a lot of that expertise and how it applies to proactively managed systems here, today. And then we also have Stephen Morrow, one of our principal network engineers, who is deeply involved with many infrastructure refresh projects, as well as a lot of our 365 cloud data migrations. So when we talk about protecting cloud, he's got a lot of knowledge to offer here. So today we framed our presentation really as an open discussion among the four of us. As the vice president and moderator, I get to ask the questions, and then we'll all benefit from hearing what these three panelists have to say. So keep questions if you have them, as Claire said, for a Q&A session at the end, and we look forward to hearing from you guys. So with that said, I'll just jump right into some of the questions that we have for today. And our first category of questions and discussion topics is really around your connection to the outside world from your on-premise locations, your edge and your wide area network. Those connections really form a lifeline, as we said, to many of the line of business and cloud solutions that you have today. So how are we approaching that? And I'll throw this first question out there. What's the minimum standard for internet redundancy and for failover today? And maybe I'll ask Steve to answer that for us.
Yeah, thank you, Mike. It's interesting that if you take a look at the environment that we live in today over where we started probably pre-COVID and 5 years ago, there's been a big push to see a lot of things pushed into the cloud, pushed out of your data centers on premise. In the old days, what you looked at a best practice would have possibly been having your redundancy based off of like a dual ISP or something as a bare minimum, where you were actually just running dual circuits into your office in case one of the circuits went down. Nowadays, it's basically the bare minimum is having dual ISPs that are separated by companies or by location out in the real world, so they're coming from different circuits, different areas of town, to reduce any problems there. There's also basically a default standard now of having like SD-WAN implemented. SD-WAN is the ability to actually monitor those two individual network connections at a minimum to see which one's operating more efficiently than the other, and provide that circuit with where most of the data is routed to once a problem's identified, or in the event of actually having a complete outage, all the traffic's routed over to that other circuit automatically for you on the fly. We're also finding now that a lot of our customers and in the industry are moving towards a third backup failure which is cellular based, just in the case that there's actually, say, heaven forbid, road construction or something going on out in front of your infrastructure and your headquarters, and it takes down both circuits. You still have that ability to stay connected and make sure that your business is online and working the best way possible through that failover cellular connection as a third option. So yeah, that's what you're basically looking now for a minimum standard, is having that SD-WAN in place and having multiple circuits coming from multiple different ISP providers in different locations to prevent an outage now that most of your stuff is moved to the cloud infrastructure rather within the building itself.
Yeah, and I want to add to that a little bit, Steve. The thing I like about how that LTE and that cellular network has grown exponentially over the last several years. It used to be something that was kind of shunned or frowned upon as a failover option, but it really has matured into a legitimate path and legitimate solution that our end users can take advantage of. So don't think that cellular is a bad thing anymore, because with the speeds that you can get from providers today, it's most certainly something that can be fallen back on should you find a need for it.
Yeah, that's a great point, Robert. Yeah, I agree with that. The advent of very wide and available 5G network now, there's definitely been an improvement in not only the coverage but also in the speed and the ability to actually use that as a viable option for a lot of things today. So appreciate that.
Yeah. So just a quick note. I understand there may be an individual having echo on the presentation. If anyone's having issues hearing us and or finding it hard to understand what it is we're trying to say, please let us know. The questions are being monitored live, and we're here to help you as much as we can. So please let us know if you're experiencing issues, and we'll see what we can do to rectify that.
Thanks, gentlemen. Hey, great points. Well made there. I'll throw out another question here. We often see that the cure for any internet issues or challenges is frequently an idea that it's important to go and buy additional bandwidth. Well, we just need more bandwidth, which can mask true infrastructure problems. How should organizations approach the idea of either adding more bandwidth or figuring out how to better use what they've got? And I guess, industry terms like traffic shaping and intelligent routing, how would those fit into this answer? Nick?
So yeah, that's a great question and like you said, ISPs definitely are all about pushing the bandwidth, right? Get 500 megabytes, get 1 gig, get 2 gig. I think I've even seen some places selling 10 gig. And for most places, even the speed you have today is probably perfectly fine. Don't buy into that you just need more number at the end of that bill, right? It's just, going down the path of using WAN optimization, where, you're telling the devices that control all of that what's important and what's not so important, right? Obviously, real-time communications, Teams chats, meetings, those types of things obviously are very more important for data purposes than someone, browsing Amazon on their break or doing something along those lines. So intelligent routing and optimization that the SD-WAN solutions offer allow those to happen in real time. So you are getting that, getting that data that needs to get there in a timely manner there. Everything else will get there. You also are optimizing based on, across those redundant connections that we just were discussing, and, making sure that if one circuit may be having a temporary problem, you're not being affected by that, because now you have the redundant connection being optimized and used. And again, these are all things done in real time. So, people buying a huge extra set of bandwidth to solve a jitter problem, that's not going to fix it. No matter how much bandwidth you throw at something, isn't going to take and fix that type of issue. So, bandwidth really comes down to it's a pipe size. If, I liken it to a water pipe. If you, start out with a standard garden hose and decide to upsize it to a fire hose, if you're still only putting a garden size hose worth of water through it, it doesn't matter. That water is going to flow through that pipe as fast as it would in a bigger pipe. You could just put more water through it, but most companies are not pushing more water through that pipe. So going down the path of optimizing, making sure that your traffic is getting to point A to point B in a timely manner, in an optimized manner, that is going to pay more dividends than just paying more for more pipe that you're not ever going to use.
Great, thanks. I appreciate that that answer, Nick. Sometimes I know that impacts firewall purchasing as well, right? Having to purchase a firewall with additional throughput to try to match. But your points about properly using what's available or what's truly needed it makes a lot of sense. I want to talk a little bit about the communications backbone. So how do older switches impact the communications through the network? Performance, stability, are there some security implications? And when should customers be looking at making a change and updating their infrastructure?
So if you don't mind, Mike, I might tackle some of this. So I think the biggest thing to look for when it's time for a refresh is basic need. So older switches, typically we found in place, lack the modern chipsets and even some of the functionality that we find in newer switches today, such as fast uplinks, PoE, which would power any type of access points deployed throughout a particular environment to increase the Wi-Fi capability, and it also might lack some buffering capability, which creates bottlenecks even when bandwidth seems fine. So switches being the backbone, it's vital to make sure that you have not just the edge optimized to deliver what it is that you're looking to achieve, but from the other side of that edge, you want your backbone to be able to meet the speeds that your system is requiring. And aging gear often struggles with that modern routing protocol that's currently being deployed now, like QoS, VLAN or virtual LAN scaling, and other types of communication methods that are available right now. And that could really limit what your environment can support, and also the communications that you'll find internally. So if you start seeing what Nick had referred to as jitters, if you start seeing kind of that lag in performance, it may be early warning signs of age-related degradation. You might see increasing packet drops. You might see breakdowns in communication, application failure, random voice over IP issues, and an inconsistent Wi-Fi experience. So if you have guests coming in trying to use your Wi-Fi network, and or your users are struggling to use Wi-Fi network, or just have a degradation in performance, maybe something in relation to the backbone as much as it is even the Wi-Fi itself. So uplink saturated or running a gigabit in a world that exceeds 10 gigabit, you just want to make sure you take full advantage of those communication protocols, and you want to make sure you take full advantage of what trunk space and what pipelines are available to you. So it's kind of funny, but from what I've seen as a field network engineer up to this point where I'm actually leading some of the sales teams, a real lift and replace of older infrastructure with modern infrastructure can really expose just how much that foundation was holding back the rest of the environment. And we see speeds increase exponentially as a result of just simply replacing some of that backbone that's communicating across any particular network.
Robert, I completely agree with you on those things, right? switches, they're just sit there, they just work in the background. You see the flashing lights on them, and there you feel like your traffic, and you say, oh, well, it's powered up, the traffic's getting from point A to point B. It can't be anything with a network, right? But aging switching environments, even though you may not go from 1 gig to 10 gig or 25 gig or whatever, even just going from a 10-year-old 1 gig switch to a brand new 1 gig switch, all of those innards that Robert just spoke about that handle the traffic going from port 1 to port 5 and so on, all of that stuff has been dramatically improved. You get the better things. It's expecting those more modern protocols, getting the traffic from where it needs to go. And you will see those, a lot of those just phantom and ghost and weird things you can't point your, pin down as problems on your network. They will be taken care of, because it's really those aging switches that aren't failing outright necessarily. They're just slowly being degraded. Applications have continued to move forward. Your workstations have moved forward. All those things have constantly moved forward, but yet your backbone that moves all that stuff around is static, and now it needs to be moved forward as well.
Yeah, and that's you made an interesting point in that 9 times out of 10 these particular communication devices don't fail automatically or dramatically. There's not like a big outage that you'll experience. It's a slow degradation. It's a slow loss of performance, and it's a slow, kind of a slow death to the edge of the network that you may not even notice, because you've become so accustomed to how it is that things are communicating across a particular network and or how applications are running. You don't realize just how much you're losing until you see the difference in a kind of a new infrastructure.
I think that's a great point. And being in the business that we're all in, it's easy to share our knowledge in terms of, terms like quality of service and VLAN and traffic shaping. At the end of the day, what you guys are really describing to me is that the user experience improves exponentially, when network performance is optimized. That it really, all the users enjoy the benefits of keeping a network, in good shape and running.
And that's true for not just on-prem software, but more importantly, the cloud-based environments as well.
100%. So let's shift gears a little bit. We talked about old networking infrastructure and how it might hold back performance and even, impair communication and therefore the user experience. What about other pieces of the network? What about endpoints or, other devices that might be out there? Is there some risk associated with keeping them, in service? If it's not broke, don't fix it, beyond maybe either the warranty or even beyond, when hardware support is available? What risks or what problems are there associated with doing that?
So, I could tell you, hardware failures and lack of performance degradation, any kind of instances, you really start running a higher risk of those particular things happening within your environment when those devices grow beyond 3 to 4 years in life cycle, or when they simply run out of warranty. Warranty is one of those insurance policies that you have on equipment running within your environment, and we have insurance policies on our lives. We have insurance policies on our cars. Warranties are simply those things attached to your production environment. So they're most certainly something that you want to keep in place. And this, out-of-date warranty devices typically lead to downtime, unplanned downtime, which is the worst kind of downtime. It's because it's a heck of a lot more costly than any type of planned replacement that you have budgeted for or you have planned for. And allocated time and space in order to provide. The other thing would be older chipsets can't support, again, kind of talked about this already, but those older chipsets in those past due devices, they can't support the modern security controls and the communications and things like things that look like would be encryption EDR, zero trust agents, some antivirus, some anti-malware applications. Um, those all those things all require a more up-to-date type of environment in order to run on, and a more up-to-date processor and chipset. Uh, so not having those in place can most certainly create gaps in your cyber threat readiness and your ability to access those cloud-based applications that you're going to you're going to grow to rely on more and more as you continue to make that elevation into the cloud. Not to mention, user productivity. So when you have end users working on old equipment, again, they become accustomed to how things just kind of chug along, and what they don't realize is that they're losing hours because the systems simply aren't producing, producing those workloads, particularly those data sets as quickly as they should be, or as quickly as they can be. So it's really important to make sure that you have something in place that can work at the speed of your end user. And end users today are getting faster and faster with not just their applications, but also being able to put production data out for whatever it is needed to be used for. People are getting, I at least think that people are getting smarter, especially people at Aktion Associates, and we require just systems that work at the speed of which we can get those questions and answered.
So that's a great answer, Robert. And I think I want to circle back to the question that I skipped from the previous slide. Understanding that we've identified some of the risks around keeping aging devices, understanding that a key piece of the user experience is around keeping devices up to date and high performing. I want to ask, which aspect of the network fabric has the most impact, on that performance day to day? What does the backbone do to the operational workload? Where can we see the most bang for dollar in terms of going out there and getting some updates made?
Yeah, so Mike, if I can take that.
Absolutely.
If you take a look at what the modern switching network fabric, represents today, you're getting your best bang for your buck, or you're getting better throughput, not from those updated chipsets, of course, and from the capacities and the features that are coming with the new additional hardware. But the modern switching network, if you look at it from a unified network, from standardized and integrated centralized systems, so you're sitting on the same platform. You can take and leverage centralized management software to monitor the performance of. You can also deploy automated configuration consistency across your entire network infrastructure. And if you look at doing that from a template and deriving that from a management point, you're providing those operational gains that are standardized across your entire infrastructure, especially when you're scaling and adding extra switches or extra capacity as your business grows. Those are a lot of the things that you're gaining in that, because you're gaining smarts and intelligence that the previous networks didn't actually have built into it, especially when you were throwing multiple vendors across your company into that networking environment. The other thing is, if you take a look at some of the advantages that are out there, a lot of the new switches are coming out with performance gains from improvements in backplane architecture and improvements in uplink architecture. So you're not sitting there where you're plugging one switch into the next and running at a 1 gigabyte connection, just like all your other devices are. You're actually looking at increasing that capacity to 10, 25, 40 gigabytes possibly between switches. So it improves that pipe that Nick referred to earlier. It increases the size of the amount of data that you can flow through there. And then as you're managing all that switching network and infrastructure together now, it allows you to control some of those quality of services things that Robert and Nick referred to. that allow you to bring intelligence into this and then route traffic intelligently to use that extra bandwidth between the switches to increase productivity and the speed at which your employees are able to get work done.
And I just want to add to that, Stephen, too, because I think that's important to note. In that, when we first started, we had, what was it, 10-100, and back in our day, that big lift was to the 1 gigabit speeds, and we were all so fanatic about it. And I was like, oh man, we're gonna move so fast. And now, like you had said before, we're looking at 10, 25, and 40 gig uplink ports, for dissemination of data. And we really do need it because data has grown. So the traffic that's traversing across our communication methods is grown as well. So we will certainly have to accommodate for that. So I'm glad you brought that up. It's a very good point.
Yeah, and to point out what you two referenced earlier too, it's that intelligent routing aspect that definitely is in that newer architecture that exists. So not only do we have that bigger pipe, we're actually better able at redirecting that traffic across that pipe, so it makes better sense for the end user and the environment that it's sitting in. So you get big performance gains out of the pipe, but you're also getting great performance gains out of that ability to manage that content and how it flows. So
that's a great point. So then, we'll shift the discussion to how long should I keep a piece of equipment, whether it's a laptop or a tablet, or heck, even, one of these switches. We see the technology advancing and evolving so quickly. We see new technologies being adopted that are, having greater and greater data demands. We see new compute demands, even for endpoint. Like, what is the right amount of time to keep, a laptop or a tablet or even a switch?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that does depend on what that device is doing and what its role is in your business, and obviously something that's like a laptop or tablet, like you were saying. Best practices are usually every 3 to 4 years on something like that. But again, high demand roles, people who are the money makers, the ones that are doing, high end estimating or engineering, or your accounting teams, those people, obviously, like we've been discussing, those applications that all of those high demand roles are using are progressing, right? They're continuing forward, they're growing, they're adding functionality and features and so on. So it's a slow degradation across the fact that the hardware is aging, but also that the load upon that hardware is expanding. And you get to the point where if you get looking at things and like, well, it still works, right? But there's those those metrics that you can't really account for, of how much longer is it taking you to do every function, and how much efficiency are you gaining back by keeping those those devices at a 3 to 4 year refresh cycle. Those things that you should probably look at, like Robert had said before, that insurance policy, right? The warranty coverage on those devices. If you go outside of the warranty coverage, you're kind of running, flying blind there, to the point where if it fails, you're going to be scrambling, for that replacement. Whereas if it's still in a warranty, you contact us, contact the vendor of the device, and get it replaced and repaired, and moving forward. And then obviously, again, if you're running hardware and it goes out of compatibility with what the security tools that you have in your environment, if it goes out of compatibility with the applications that you're running on those devices, that obviously can change your refresh cadence as well. But another thing to think about when you're refreshing things and have that predictable saying, I'm going to refresh my laptops every 3 years, is that ability to predict your budget for that sort of refresh cycle, right? That every year you're going to refresh 25 to 30% of your fleet. You can then budget for that. That it's coming. And again, don't go down that path of the old adage of penny wise, pound foolish, right? Saving that money up front by extending out those refresh cycles seems like a good idea because you're saving that money, but you are then potentially spending or losing more money down the path of lost productivity, people going offline because their machine has died, or they're just actually producing less because their machine is taking longer to do such things. So, keeping everything on that 3 and 4 year refresh schedule keeps everything supported, secure, performing well, and gives you that predictable budget. So it's kind of a win-win across the board for coming up with that cycle that makes sense.
Yeah, those are good points, Nick. I also want to say that, if you're looking at predicting your yearly budgeting numbers, think of this as like a rolling deployment also. We don't want you to look at things that you're purchasing now and 3.5 to 4 years from now, you're looking at replacing your entire infrastructure in one swoop. Think about these things about splitting this out. So you're doing a third or a quarter every year and planning for it from that perspective of rolling things out. And along with the lines, that the security aspect, it's from a technical aspect, I can't emphasize enough that as infrastructure ages and these devices age, not only is it slower and bleeding productivity from your employees, but there's also increasing the risk of what you're looking at. And with modern chipsets and the security features and AI built in these new devices, you're leveraging some of this to actually improve your business speed and performance overall for how your employees work and protecting yourself from a security incident possibly because the newer equipment has been updated to protect you from those things.
That's a great point. So to one of my favorite subjects here, we sounded the alarm all year. We flashed the red lights. We did everything we could to make everyone aware that Windows 10 support was coming to an end. And now that we're past that, and in a post-Windows 10 era, it turns out that not every Windows 10 machine was updated. And we may need to figure out a plan or a strategy. So, I'll ask, how should companies that still have some Windows 10 infrastructure approach that? How should they deal with the remaining task at hand?
So, Mike, I'd love to kick off this particular conversation, and I'm going to show my age a little bit here because I feel like we've in the 20 plus years that I've worked in IT, I can honestly say we've had very similar conversations starting back with the Windows NT days, right? When when Windows NT released in 2000, and people held on to their machines because of the applications didn't quite evolve, or they were afraid to take that next leap, or they were afraid of kind of the learning curve. But Windows mainstream support has ended, and just like it did with Windows NT, just like it did with 2000, and that means no more security patches, and that exposes not just that machine, but it exposes your entire infrastructure, it exposes your entire network, and all devices within that particular compound. So it's vital that you look at your Windows 10 machines and you try to find that upgrade compatibility up to Windows 11. Now, Windows 11 does have, again, we've been talking chipset quite a bit. Windows 11 does have a higher chipset requirement, and it also has TPM and secure boot. I apologize, I sounded Canadian there for a second. Needs. So those machines have to meet those particular standards if you're going to upgrade to Windows 11. But it is most certainly something that you do need to do. But doing so, you can have performance viability if upgraded, because Windows 11 does require more resources than Windows 10 did. And so ultimately, I think replacement in those particular types of instances is something that most certainly should be warranted and should most certainly be budgeted for if it's not done already. Now, I will tell you that there are some extended security updates that are out there right now, and I know Nick is gonna, I saw him. He's looking to, he's ready to pounce on me. Yes, I was gonna hit on that. They do have extended security updates available, but they're honestly, if you've looked into it, they're quite expensive. They're very, very cost ineffective, and they're really intended as a temporary bridge and not a long-term solution for organizations to buy into, to hold on to their legacy applications and or the machines that they just kind of fell in love with and they don't want to change as a result of either that learning curve or incompatibility. And so if you did do that, again, running those particular instances that are unpatched runs extremely high risk of compliance failures, cyber insurance denial claims, a higher likelihood of a particular breach, and of course, operational instability. So you really want to make sure you catalog those machines and you have a clear remediation plan put into place for again, either patching those particular machines, upgrading those machines, or outright replacing those with Windows 11 compatible units that your system can run with on a day-to-day basis. So I think it's important to treat this more as a risk reduction and business priority, business continuity priority. Business keeping your business up and running as much as it should be, not a routine IT project, one that you can, again, plan for, budgetary for, because Windows 10 support ended back in October. We're now in the middle of December, believe it or not, and this year has completely flown by. So the longer we hold on to those particular units, the more risk you're going to run into by holding on to them and leaving yourself vulnerable to those particular attacks and those particular exploits.
Great points, Robert. I think maybe we can shift the conversation a little bit to security, and a little bit more around business continuity. So, we're seeing that so many different platforms and solutions have moved from an on-premises deployment to a cloud or SaaS model. And I guess, how is that changing the security need? How is that driving folks to alter either their processes or the products that they have deployed to keep themselves secure?
Yeah, so with that move to SaaS offerings and everything in the cloud, right? The security has kind of moved from being, let's protect the network, let's build the moat, build the wall, all of that, to we need to protect the identity, the data, and the access, because all of our users are coming from all over the place, right? They might be at home, they're at the airport, they're at the Starbucks, they're wherever they're at. So having that perimeter protection no longer really makes sense, because most people are just not within that perimeter. So again, that new perimeter, if you want to call it that, is considered, their identity, right? How they're authenticating, doing multi-factor authentication, creating conditional policies that say this user should be logging in from this country and not all of these other countries, right? Obviously, if they're coming in from these other places, they're probably not who they say they are, so we need to block that type of thing. Then you also have the devices themselves that they're using, right? You want to make sure that your devices are the trusted devices, they're compliant with your security policies, meaning having the proper EDR software, the other pieces of software there, and that those devices, if they have sensitive data on them, that they're encrypted. So if that device is lost or whatever, your company important data is not being able to be just pulled off of there because of that encryption. And then obviously, making sure that the applications that they're using in the cloud now, they have those proper access policies created and maintained and monitored. So, the move is to, least privilege, making sure that all of your users only have the access to the stuff they need and to nothing that they don't, right? There's no reason for them to give blanket access. And most applications today are providing that very granular ability to assign, access to those systems. So making sure that you were going through and doing that, that's the new way of protecting the network and everything. So, a lot of cloud apps today are assuming a zero trust mindset by default. That's kind of the where security in our world is going, right? There's not trust but verify. It's, making sure that every step along the way, they're meeting these, criteria, or they're just not let in at all. So you'll probably hear that out in the world today, is that zero trust mindset. And that's how you have to kind of think of things. How do I prove who I am, how I am, where I'm from, and all of that, rather than just, giving one password and everything is correct. So, the threats in the world today, are no longer just pounding on the door and hoping to find a way in, right? They are credential theft. They're trying to do phishing attempts, finding people to slip up and give them the credentials so that they can just go right in the front door with those. Then they're even getting more complicated with the token and session hijacking, right? Putting up pages and making them think that that's where they're going, and then they'll generate those tokens that the computers are using and then take those and do their malicious work with them. And they're also getting into, different applications and having if those applications are misconfigured from the get-go, that can, that's what threat actors are focusing on. So some of these things that obviously they're like the SaaS misconfigurations, or if those SaaS things that you're using have APIs so that you can have other third-party applications connect in and talk to each other. Those are all dependent on in making sure that the vendors that run those SaaS offerings are keeping up with those. But we have to be diligent on our side as well to make sure we're not handing out the keys to the castle through our credentials, or we're going on an insecure network, or using a device that's been compromised. All of those things are where we have to look at focus security now. So, this requires a consistent policy from the business to enforce across all the devices, all of your networks, all of the apps, not just inside that office, right? The cloud has turned security inside out. We're no longer focused solely on securing hardware or remote access. We're securing all those identities, all the access, all the data everywhere. And that's the world we're going to be living in going forward.
So, Nick, I have a question I get a lot from my particular client base. In regards to this particular topic, what would you consider the minimum baseline for that data integrity, especially with more of a SaaS-based model being adopted across organizations today?
Well, when you say baseline data integrity, I'm not quite sure what you're asking there.
Yeah, so what would be a methodology, but a security methodology that the clients can adopt? I guess what's the bare minimum that Aktion Associates might require end users to have when accessing data remotely or accessing systems remotely?
Oh, gotcha. Yeah. So that's where you're talking, regarding making sure that the workstations that they're using are company devices. They have the prescribed, EDRs that's on there. We have additional layers that we might tack on there for, if the budget warrants, for DNS protections, whitelisting of the actual applications to the point where that's definitely more of the zero trust. So in that baseline world, we have the traditional EDR, right? That's the more reactive system. It's always monitoring and checking on everything that's going on in your system, but it's looking for those bad things, and it reacts when it finds one, right? But there are now solutions that go down that zero trust methodology of it will not allow anything to run unless you've explicitly allowed it. So it doesn't matter, even if it's a good thing, perfectly fine, not malicious, that has to be approved by your administrator, and that's how is a great baseline protection. It does obviously cause friction for a lot of people. It's a different way of thinking, and we're all used to being able to kind of run what we want and just having those protections come in and save us at the end. And these types of zero trust can certainly get in the way of that, but it is the better solution going forward. It may have that. We'd much rather have friction with the users to get a new application vetted and verified it's going to work, rather than dealing with a large ransom or a big downtime because of an open security.
I almost commented during your earlier answer, Nick, that you addressed threat actors and the things they do so calmly when we have understood the urgency associated and the time, how critical time is and quick response is in instances where a response is needed. So what about data integrity? Robert, you mentioned the term. I think maybe we should talk a little bit about, what does that mean? And then what does it mean in terms of, kind of moving data, customer data or shared files or those types of things to the cloud? And I guess then, maybe we can even highlight how does storing things or addressing or sharing documents through links in an email as opposed to attachment, become advantageous.
Yeah. So, and, talking about that, Mike, I mean, obviously, as we progressed in the last 5 years, we've moved into this collaborative environment where we're up in the cloud and we're sharing documents and sharing information across computers and accessing this in real time between users. And, a lot of things have improved over where we came from, which, you kind of referred there a little bit to, email attachments and how those work, and thinking about how people worked previous to this cloud collaborative environment. So when you actually do an email attachment, you're creating a new individual copy of a document in a time and place that, is sent out amongst that distribution list. And, potentially what you're then doing is making an individual copy on everyone's computer for a place and time. And a lot of times, versions get lost or overwritten because people are working without outdated information, or the distribution list isn't complete in the beginning. So as things move between the group, we're all familiar with the loss of data or the loss of truth that comes from when you say something and whisper it to the person next to you in a circle. By the time it comes back to you, it's radically different from the message that you initially sent out. So, with email attachments, what you're actually doing is creating individual copies of places and time for a document, and you lose that truth in the data that's there. And, you don't want to be making decisions that are from bad information or outdated information. Often you lose visibility onto who edited or accessed the information and the initial ownership. And then you're creating different versions that can be stored out on individual systems. So with the collaborative environment that companies like Microsoft has pushed towards, you're now at a point where this information and the data integrity surrounding this information is up on a cloud server where everyone is accessing the same information and getting the same message at the same time, and the versioning becomes critical within this environment. It allows you to track changes. It allows you to roll back mistakes. You can see who edited or changed or accessed instantaneously the documents, and then you can choose which version of that single source of truth is from the ownership of that documentation to make sure that everyone's working from the same group of information across the company. Collaborative, environments like this, they provide and maintain real-time consistency for you, which reduces confusion and minimizes duplication of work or verifications. So it provides that important performance increase within your workforce to be able to tackle things more quickly without asking a lot of questions, because you're working from the same information across the board. This also helps prevent things like the shadow versions I mentioned that you might have out sitting on desktops and laptops or sitting in inboxes yet to be accessed because people were, out of town on vacation or unable to actually get to the email in a timely fashion. So it makes sure that your team is on par and up to date on things through that one common location and environment. If you think about this, it's like, every email attachment's a new unmanaged version of your data, and that, the real data integrity comes from that shared workspace environment and the versioning management piece of that piece, and that way you're always looking at the same truth. And, Mike brought up this quick point there that there's a difference between an email attachment or utilizing where you're sharing that basically that information within the email. And, I wouldn't say stop using email to share your data, but if you share the file or share the information, what you're doing is providing links and access to that one centralized cloud location to get the same message. And if everyone's using the link to that location, you definitely eliminate that ability to have that shadow environment out there with duplicate copies and things on individual workstations. And that's the main difference between having an attachment, which is that individual component, and then in sharing that document and collaborating out in that cloud space where your information is stored for your company.
Yeah, we found so much value in leveraging those cloud shared platforms for that, and I know that you've helped many of our customers do the same. Having said that, we know how critical backups are to a successfully managed and functioning and protected environment, but with these different silos or these different areas of data storage, what is the right approach? What's the right strategy? What's the right balance of where do I back up what?
So, Mike, if I may, so we were talking a lot in regards to online collaboration. We were talking a lot in regards to a SaaS-based model or a software as a service-based model. The one thing I think we need to lay out first and foremost is that the SaaS-based model, where your application or the resources are being housed or used within the cloud, does not necessarily provide you protection. It provides you accessibility, it provides you availability, but it doesn't always protect you from yourself and or malicious attacks. So I want to make sure that we start the discussion off with that statement, because again, platforms such as Google, Microsoft, Azure, Salesforce, et cetera, they don't necessarily shield organizations from accidental deletion or malicious deletion or ransomware attacks or even misconfigured integrations into how those particular end users are operating those SaaS-based models. So I think a good backup strategy is really going to have to settle on where the data is actually being created and manipulated, and not just disseminated. So I think cloud platform, kind of sync backups and localized backups still matter, because users are not just creating data or leveraging data within the cloud. Sometimes it's local, and that local data does need to be protected. So if you're having localized copies, you want to make sure that you have something in place for that. Just in case an incident occurs, the device itself dies, ransomware does attack your infrastructure. You want something off-site or somewhere, a different silo that's unaffected by those particular instances. So I might let Stephen talk about strategy, because he's, from that SaaS-based model and the SharePoint and collaboration dissemination, he's a heck of a lot more ingrained in how that might work. But I want to make sure we started off the discussion with those particular topics.
Great.
Yeah, and you're perfectly right from that standpoint where you're coming from, Robert. It is, it is about accessibility and shareability when you're sitting out there in the cloud for most of these modern solutions. And they don't necessarily include backup, as you referenced, as Mike referenced also, that you definitely want to have some means of protection to go beyond what is provided to you by, say, for instance, your Microsoft SharePoint site. So what the best recommendation is having a additional backup strategy outside of where your data is stored, so you're not putting all your eggs in one basket. We always recommend that there's companies out there like Dropsuite and other instances where these companies actually will back up your cloud data, and then you'll have secure copies outside of the environment in case you lose access to your data up in the cloud. Or not all bad actors are intentional by any means either, right? There's reference to accidentally deleting things and not knowing about it. For Microsoft, for instance, you're covered for basically 93 days in their deletion mailbox before it's lost. But so having that additional backup option outside of that, so you can recover the data or recover things that are lost accidentally or intentionally, they'll help provide you for ransomware protection. They help provide you for interruption and service protection, and obviously for or anything that might come about between loss of data that was unexpected. So you always want to make sure you have a separate backup solution there. With regards to endpoint backups, with Microsoft particularly, we don't necessarily back up the endpoint because the idea now is to have your corporate data working within that cloud infrastructure and available for a collaboration perspective. And it's usually all of your pertinent information is backed up in the cloud. But from the same standing, that work that you're doing on a day-in, day-out basis, there's options like OneDrive, which provides you that backup so you can transfer between devices and still have access to your same content and look and feel that you would normally have. So it provides you that ability if your device goes down or if something else goes down those endpoints, provide the basic coverage for work that you're working on today, and also mobility between devices to do things like that.
Yeah.
Great. So I know we're running a little short on time here, but this subject is near and dear to my heart, right? Proactive management, what our engineers are doing for customers every day and what many customers are doing for themselves every day. So I just kind of want to jump in. What is the best, across the edge, the network backbone that we talked about, across devices, across security, where is the best place to apply proactive management?
I'll try to run through these questions and get everybody, out of here on time. So, for the first one there, the biggest impact definitely comes from, in proactive management in getting visibility and early warning of any real issues before you guys, before people and end users start feeling them, right? You're going to be monitoring and all across the different parts of your network, the edge, the backbone, the one we've been talking about, the devices, all your security, all of that, is to try to, get the early warning and prevent things. So you're moving, things from being break fix to predict and prevent, right? That's the whole purpose of proactive management, is trying to, get things taken care of before they actually become a huge problem. So, what things should be monitored and what not, you're going to kind of look at your network health, your device compliance. Is it up to date? Is it patched? Do you have all the proper EDR and antivirus and all that type of thing on your machines properly, right? Is your Wi-Fi, working properly? Is it coming up with a bunch of failures and reconnects and things like that? On a monthly basis, you might look at capacity trends for that conversation we had around the bandwidth and in your internet connectivity. Are your switches and everything, are they being highly utilized? Is it to the point where you need to expand that bandwidth on the switching side of things or upgrade them to a higher end switch? So all of those things, those are the types of things you want to manage and monitor. And help you get that proactiveness out of your management. So, and lastly, the human element, right? That is a very important piece of proactive management. All these tools, all this automation, and especially the AI that's all the rage now, they're all very incredibly powerful. They're all very important to this process, but they do not replace the human portion of that, right? All of us are very steeped in, in IT, not just Aktion. People, IT people across the globe they have had that real world experience. They know how their network runs. They know how things should look, and they are going to have that judgment that those automated tools just aren't going to have, because they don't have the human brain, right? So, proactive management that succeeds when someone is accountable for identifying those patterns, not just having the tools generate the patterns, right? Having someone take a look at those things and make educated, recommendations on how to take care of those. Understanding all of the different things that are coming from all these tools, and obviously a lot of times tool A doesn't talk to tool B, and so on. That human is that integration tool, and they're able to take and aggregate all that information and make, again, educated recommendations on how to take care of those items. So, automation can tell you that something is wrong and maybe even take care of a symptom, but a good partner, a good human, or whatever IT person tells you what it means and what to do about it. There might be see things beyond that. And, the human element is what turns monitoring into true proactive management of your environment.
Completely agree. Very,
I
very
like
good.
that, Nick. I might have to steal that.
So we would love the opportunity to partner with you if we haven't done so already. I encourage you to allow us to make your lives easier. We work very well, alongside IT teams, co-managing, and we can provide full capabilities there as well. So, I've thrown a slide on that just kind of lists out our catalog of services, but realistically, I know we've run just a little bit over on time. Thank you so much for attending today. I really hope that you found value in the information provided by these experts. I know that I felt privileged to share the stage with them today. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. Please reach out to us with any additional questions.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great weekend, everybody.